One of the first things that new owners of a Royal Alloy GP scooter decide to do is fit extras, and they're usually including a backrest and carrier. This leads them to the first issue, which is taking off the side panels. Now, we know that Lambrettas, you could take them off in 2 or 3 seconds. However, with a Royal Alloy, you shouldn't need to be taking your panels off on a regular basis because the reliability means you won't need to. But on these occasions, you have to get them off. And when you haven't done it before, it can be a little tricky. Also, refitting them becomes an issue. This is my GP 300 and I've had these panels off once now and refitted them, and I think perhaps a couple of good tips on how to do this would be useful. There are 3 fixing points for the panels, and they all are accessed from underneath. Now, I don't have a lift for my scooter, so I'll have to get down and on the floor and look up at those. And the first one we'll look at is the one on the back of the panel. Looking up at the back connection there, you can see there is a nut, and this is a bolt with a Phillips head on this side, and it really is just a question of holding that steady and undoing this nut. Now, I haven't actually held the back of this. The pressure of the panel is just holding it in place, and it should come out without too much of an issue. Now, these are a captive nut, and make sure that you save them for refitting. You may be able to see the back of that nut has some serrations on it which grip the panel. Now that's the bolt removed, and it looks as though Royal Alloy have improved on the flange, certainly on the panel side here. It's now bigger than it was on my 125, and it makes it a little bit easier to line up. This is the fixing in the middle of the panel. It's at the front end of the exhaust almost. It's a little bit tighter to get to, and if I just remember, this has actually got a nut head, or bolt head should I say, on the back with a nut on that side. So I'll need to undo those 2. These are the fixings from the panel. This one is the middle fixing, and that's actually an 8mm spanner to undo that. This one is from the rear end, and that's a 10mm spanner. It's odd that they're different, but they are. And now we'll look at the last fixing, which is just under here, which is where your panel comes down to the floorboard, and we'll have a look underneath for that now. So the last nut is here, and it's captive on the back, so you don't need to get to the other side of it, and that requires a 10mm spanner to undo it. So all the fixings are off now, and you'll see I use a torch when I'm working underneath, and it makes it a lot easier to see where you're putting your spanners. So what we want to do now is lift the panel up here, and my biggest concern with these jobs is to avoid damaging your paintwork. And if you just sort of take it off and forward from the back, then you see you can lift it up on the middle fixing, which is bolted through the floor. Now you will need to disconnect the rear indicator, and that's done with this lead here. Press down on the little clip sticking up there and pull it forward. You can then remove your panel, and you'll see on this that there is a rubber seal here, both here and down here. This is slightly different to the 125 I had before. They seem to have changed stroke improved on the actual rubber seal, but They're difficult to get back on, and we'll look at that when we refit the panel later on. So the other side panel will come off identically, and there is different bits of kit behind it, but it's the 3 screws again, and very gently lift it away, disconnecting your indicator, and put that somewhere safe till you've done what you intend to do. Now, just looking up and under the opposite side panel, there appears to be more room to work here, both on the back one and this middle one. With the front fixing, I've had to put the, there it is, I've had to put the side stand down, but it looks reasonably accessible at this point. Now, you don't have to take both panels off to fit a backrest and carrier. You can do that with just the other side off, but I'm doing this because I'm just having a little bit of work done on my panels. Well, I've finished working on my panels, and here we are on the kitchen table. Now, I'm not sure if all the GPs from now on will have this type of rubber gasket on the bottom here, which you can see, and the new rubber gasket for attaching it to the panel. I suspect they will, because the old ones were difficult to get in. One of the problems being that pushing down on the panel itself, it's stuck in the rubber and made it difficult to align. Now, I've taped on the back the seal to the bottom because it's difficult to hold in place. And you can see that from the back, just looking at the panel here. I've just put a piece of gaffer tape just to hold that seal in place, to stop it falling off when I'm trying to mount the rest of the panel. So this is the new rubber seal that Royal Alloy are putting on these panels. It simply goes onto the edge there, but while you're fitting it, it will have a tendency to drop off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put masking tape on it to hold it in place. Now, I've done this before, and the masking tape will just come out, but it's an awkward job if the actual gasket is moving itself. So I'm just adding some strips of masking tape that will keep it in place. Now, most of you will probably have the old style gasket, and I suggest maybe you put some silicone on that just to help the panel itself slip into the groove and align the bolts, fixing bolts, as you're trying to fit it. But as it is a tricky job trying to line them up. This is a typical example of Royal Alloy listening to customers and doing something about it. So I would expect that this will be the new panel seals for all GPs from now on. It would make sense to do that, and that's what they tend to do. So there we are with the masking tape. As you see, it doesn't stick that well, but it will stick sufficiently to hold that gasket in place as we drop it back onto the bike, which you'll see. Now, the observant among you will see that I've fitted some rear crash bars there. You can see that on another video. I'm going to start by aligning that front bolt that's pointing down, and the reason for this is I don't want to scratch the floorboards struggling to move it around. And now I'm going to just lift the panel into that groove and get it into place. Now, it's not particularly easy, but particularly with the backrest and carry I've got on there, because that reduces the gap to get it in. So I'm going to use both hands on that and do a very careful job. Now, I've got that in place. It actually went on quite easy there. I started with the front shoulder there, fitted that, making sure that the bolt was through the floor, and the rest just seemed to follow in place. As I say, this new gasket that you're using makes the job quite a lot easier. Well, I started with the bolt under the front here, because that was already in place having dropped the panel in. I then did the second bolt, which is under the end of the footboard there, and then placed the third one in. Now, the only way to describe this is fiddly. However, the new rubbers are a big improvement, and they've made the tangs slightly larger to accommodate the bolts. The thing now, of course, is to take this tape off, and I think you'll find it simply pulls off. Now, having said that, if you try it without this, you'll probably find you're up and down trying to keep the rubbers in place. But that should make life a lot easier. But I will emphasise, these are the new rubbers that Royal Alloy are now fitted. I'd be tempted, if I had a bike with the old rubbers, to see if I could order a set off Carnaby or one of the distributors, because they will make taking your panels on and off a lot easier. But there we are, the panel's back on, and that's the job. Just need to tighten those nuts and the 2 bolts up, and the job's finished. Fiddly is the word I'd use for this. There's no other way around it. And with the older rubbers, the alignment of the holes to get your bolts through is difficult. A little bit of silicone may help, but you will be pulling and heaving for a little. So all done now, panel back on, just the other side to fit. One thing I should mention is don't forget to connect your rear indicator wire back up before you put your panel on. It is possible, certainly on the GP300, to fit it afterwards on this side. However, probably best to do it before you start putting the panel in place.